Good morning, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Environmental Social Justice. I am your host, Wendy Nystrom, and today our special guest is Valkyrie Holmes. She is the CEO of Faura, so welcome to the show, Valkyrie.
Thank you so much for having me.
Anytime, and I love your name. That is like the coolest name to possibly have, Valkyrie.
Thank you.
It's so powerful and strong, but we're here to talk about you and Faura. So before we jump into your company, you have a really cool background working for SpaceX and NASA. Could you tell us, about that and how you got into it?
Yeah. So I did a couple internships early on. I took a gap year once kind of COVID took face, and I went through my junior year entirely online. And so after that, I realized, I'd have to go back in person to school. And I didn't want to do that because I already had projects that I was like really passionate about, and I knew going to school would kind of mess that up. So took a gap year. I graduated that summer, took a gap. And then during that gap, I did a pretty long internship over the summer of 2021 for NASA's SEAS Institute within kind of the realms of earth science. So that was studying meteorites and meteorite trajectory as it enters Earth's atmosphere. And then I got a little bit more of like an electrical engineering and computer science background with MIT's Women in Tech program, and then kind of transitioned into SpaceX's AVI team for the summer of 2022. So a lot of like little random things. I really like space. I really like just being in a space that was, I guess, previously not injected with innovation and kind of injecting innovation. So that's kind of my background up until I got into wildfire stuff.
And also just, don't downgrade women in engineering, women in science, women in tech. Very important that this is now being celebrated and promoted because it's necessary. And people like you bring that light that is so needed. But let's talk about Faura. Wildfires are devastating the world, actually. We're seeing this worldwide, especially with what recently happened in Maui. Could you explain very simply what Faura does?
Yeah, so Faura makes wildfire prevention simple for regular homeowners and residential communities. We basically make the process from assessment to getting grant funding to like financing and like kind of taking the financial piece all the way to getting the work actually done, connected with contractors and making that a maintenance kind of deal. I think a big problem within wildfire is that people do this work and then forget about it. There's a lot of kind of decision paralysis at the time because we forget throughout the winter period. And that's just normal. That's just kind of like what humans do. But it is something that we need to make a lot simpler for people to remember. And that's kind of what we want to do, is remove that decision paralysis and make it really easy.
Well, I mean, a lot of people just don't know what to do when they say, okay, I need, as we've said multiple times, it is cheaper to do wildfire prevention and mitigation than to rebuild. So what you're doing is that mitigation prevention tactic, but people don't know exactly what that means or how to even do it, or quite honestly, who to work with. Because there are a lot of people out there that claim, a lot of people love to jump in the wildfire space and say, I can do this, and they don't, or they can't. And you are actually that conduit of helping homeowners connect with the right people.
Yeah, exactly. And the biggest thing that I see is, people don't know what to do, but it's also, if they get a lot of information, it's a lot of information. There's people are in mailing lists, they're on Nextdoor, they talk to their fire chief, their local fire station. And then at the end of it, they just have all of this information. And it's like, okay, what do I do now? Like, who is telling me priority wise what has to be done? So it helps to have kind of just like a third opinion. We've studied this, we've worked with this for 3 years. Like we have consulted all of these people. Like, this is like definitively just boom, 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 what you should focus on. Yeah. And in terms of the contractor piece, it's definitely, people are definitely getting more into it. We've seen a lot more like wildfire defensible space specific contractors kind of get into it. But yeah, it is about weeding out kind of the people that want to make a buck off of the summer work and the other people that actually do have the qualification.
Yeah. And I let me just fully express that to the viewers. I started really focusing on wildfire probably 5 or 6 years ago, my background being environmental insurance. And I saw a ton of people hopping into that space. And all they cared about was selling their information, selling their data, selling their quote unquote services to make money. And they made I listened to these groups make so many promises. And I knew their background. And they're like, you can't say that. You can't make those guarantees because none of that's proven yet. So then I saw everybody kind of fall out of that space because it wasn't the quick buck they wanted. And people like you who actually have the science background, the engineering background, the technical background that are going in there and saying, I can take this massive amount of information. I can whittle it down to something easily understood by a homeowner or a business and walk you through it to understand. So that's when I was introduced to you and your work. I thought this is important that people know that Valkyrie exists because she is simplifying it for you, making it easy. And just today, there was an article released by the Insurance Institute for Business and Home Safety, the 𝐖𝐤𝐺𝐼. Yes, I had to look up what 𝐖𝐤𝐺𝐼 stands for. They actually certified their first wildfire proof. Nothing is fireproof, but fire resistant home. And that's what we need to start focusing on. That's the key right there.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. And again, fire is so complex and, like you said, nothing can be fireproof. There are a lot of things that now we know to be proven good for a home in terms of saving it from fire. But yeah, I think a lot of people get that mistaken. Nothing can be fully fireproof, and anyone promising that is probably not a great actor in this space. But yeah, like that is the kind of point, because if many homes in a community are fire resistant and have all of the proper precautions, it's much better than kind of like the blocky, some are, some aren't kind of pattern that we've seen in the past. Because the fact of the matter is, if both of you are neighbors and one person has defensible space and the other doesn't, it's kind of, both are going to burn. So.
Yeah, it's not going to matter. It's got to be a huge community-wide effort. And I'm glad you brought that up, because some people say, well, I protected my home. That's great. But if your neighbors didn't do the same thing, the embers are still going to hit you.
Yeah.
And that's one of the things you do. You deal with HOAs, which is a challenge. HOAs are challenging, but you do work with communities and HOAs and fire departments. So what are you seeing with that? Any information you can share?
Yeah, so in my experience, HOAs are pretty slow. And it's kind of like one of the reasons why we're trying to pivot a little bit to more like individuals and making it simpler for individuals to kind of then apply back to communities. But yeah, we've been working with HOAs and property associations as of right now. And there's a lot of voting that goes on, a lot of different opinions, a lot of tweaks, a lot of kind of just figuring out what the best plan is for a lot of different people. But ultimately, it seems like the people that are in high risk areas right now, we're doing pilots in Napa, they understand that they're at risk and they understand that it's a big problem. It's mostly just about like where do we put our money, or like, do they want to hire a grant writer? Do they want to like do a full assessment? Do they want to just get the work done because they've already had an assessment? And that also just depends on the resources. Napa is pretty well funded in terms of their wildfire like prevention programs and like the kinds of contractors they have. They have a lot of them. So they're definitely more well off than a lot of other like wildfire prone areas. But I think it's mostly about that. It's just connecting all of those pieces of what people want in a community and then making it simple for them to understand after that.
Yeah, I mean, and people, if they may remember, Napa and Sonoma had huge wildfires 3-4 years ago. And we're actually seeing, Washington State and Oregon and Canada are getting very hot and very dry. So those are very high risk areas right now. I don't think anyone really anticipated Maui having the devastation that it did. That was a shocker. This is our new normal. This is normal now. There's no more fire season. It's a year-round thing. Mm-hmm. But you are actually, in addition to your services, I went to your website. You've got some pretty cool tech that you're working on. Drones and cannons. I mean, that's cool stuff.
Yeah, I mean, I will preface it by saying like that was that's not like included within Faura, I guess. Like that was a previous project that I've worked on. And I guess a little bit more of my background is I worked on a startup called Project Firefly. That was essentially that. It was on the suppression side, so less of the prevention side, but it was basically combining drones and what are called vortex cannons to better contain wildfires. And that was more of like basically replacing the firefighters on the front line so they can fight more effectively and put them out of harm's way.
Yes.
We were doing
Yeah.
pilots for that for a while. And then as you start to dig into the kind of fire space, you realize that prevention is the root cause of the issue, right? Like prevention, why spend all of this money on tech for suppression when we can spend a lot more money than we are actually trying to solve the root cause of the issue? So that's kind of the path that I began to choose. But that was a very cool part of my life, and I'm excited for the other technology that arises because of that kind of work. So
no, I mean, it's cool stuff what you work on, and just having the background that you have, that you can actually think of these things and not only just think of it, but say, okay, I'm going to build this now, because you can, you know how to. So it's just cool stuff, and I'm a nerd, so I love that. But yeah, a root cause is prevention. We have to actually stop it before it starts. And do you actually work with insurance carriers? Do you ever try to partner with those guys?
that's actually a big step that we're trying to nail down right now. Right now, we're building what's called a digital inspection tool, and it's basically just a digital home inspection for people that are specifically at high risk wildfire. Right now, the biggest thing with insurance companies that we found is slightly backwards is they still do in-home inspection, like inspections, like in person. People come to your home and they inspect and kind of check for representation of like whatever you filled out on the original quote.
Verification, yeah.
Which it's just so interesting because I think it's like 85% of people in the US have a cell phone and have access to the internet. And they're still sending people and spending millions and millions of dollars every year to send people to check people's homes. And especially in California, where insurance companies are dropping homes, even if they have accurate defensible space, it doesn't seem like a very good use of their time. So that's kind of one area we're trying to target to then kind of mold into other areas. But insurance carriers are definitely a big, big deal.
Yeah, I mean, and they are pulling out of certain states just because, you know, if they're for profit. If they are losing money, they will pull out. And I can understand them going in person to inspect properties because people fib.
Yeah.
They say that their property is non-combustible, and maybe it's not, or maybe they simply don't understand what non-combustible means.
Mhm.
And so they have to verify that for their underwriting purposes. But it would be nice if that could be more streamlined or automated. That would make things much easier. But yeah, carriers, it's going to be tough in these high-risk areas to get them back on board. But with the new technologies coming out and the new mitigation measures that are coming out, and hopefully the funding, or if people start writing grants for this, that would work out awesome. But more on you. How do people find you? Because I think HOAs need your services, individuals need your services just to get through the noise and to figure out what they need to do.
Yeah. So yeah, you can go to our website. It's just faura.us, and Faura is FAURA. That's kind of where you can find all of our information, get a general breakdown. And I'm basically just everywhere at Valkyrie Holmes. I'm on LinkedIn, Twitter, whatever kind of apps you use usually. So that's kind of where you can find me. And my email is just my first name at faura.us. So I'm pretty open and want to answer any questions and kind of aid in this process. I think we all need to kind of just push things forward in terms of prevention. And I believe it's just, we spend so little of the actual money that we allocate to actual prevention measures.
Oh yeah.
And I feel like that needs to change. We need more innovation. Like I said in the beginning, I want to be in a space where I can inject innovation into it that wasn't previously there. And I believe that this is that space. So.
Oh, absolutely. We need to flip the script on that because there's so much money for rebuilding and resilience and build back better. Great. That's fantastic and necessary. But let's stop the problem before it starts.
Yeah, exactly.
Then you don't have someone rebuilding their life or trying to make a new life with, you know, losing. I mean, so a lot of these wildfires or mega fires, I don't think people quite understand that they run with the clothing on their back, if it's nighttime. Some people don't have clothing on and they're running down the street and you literally lose everything. So when, you know, you're trying to build back, you were building back from nothing. So let's stop it before it starts. Give Valkyrie a call, look up the company, FAURA. I think I got that right. And just work on the mitigation. It will save you money in the long run. it will save you nightmares and trauma and stress in the long run, because these are happening. We just have to accept the fact that fire is going to be more prevalent, more frequent.
Absolutely.
Yeah. On that, guys, thank you so much, Valkyrie. Loved having you here. Loved our conversation. Keep doing. I mean, I just love the tech you're working on. I mean, it's just cool to me. So
thank you. Yeah.
It's fantastic. Women in tech will ask a woman, she gets it done, right? So Valkyrie's getting it done. And we'll talk to you guys later. I'm Wendy Nystrom, your host with Environmental Social Justice. Check out Valkyrie. Stop those wildfires. Talk to you later. Bye.